Hello and welcome. You're watching this special campaign of CNBC TV 18 called Future Female Forward, where we put the spotlight on women leaders, gender parity, and the discrimination and challenges that women face on account of their gender. Today, I have with me a very special guest. She's Annapurna Vishwanathan. She's a Chief Information Officer at Cummins India. Annapurna, thank you so much for joining us, for making time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
For the benefit of our viewers, could you explain to us the role of a Chief Information Officer?
Absolutely. So my job, me and my team do is to basically provide cool tech for an industrial company to function.
All right. I want to understand a bit about your journey and the challenges that you face. But before that, see, we always start this conversation on a high note. So, do you want to talk about the moment when you thought that you've arrived in life?
Absolutely. So I think the day I got this job of being the Chief Information Officer for Cummins has probably been my career highest. It was one that gave me a lot of joy, a lot of satisfaction, and in some way I felt that, everything I had been preparing for, I've sort of reached that goal with this role. And so I think it was one of my high points professionally.
And do you also want to talk about what you faced in this journey when you started? Because we were discussing that, when you once started leading a team, there was a lot of resistance. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So, when you start off your career as a young B school grad, what naturally happens is that you enter the workforce, you're 25 years old, and you come from business schools, right? So you immediately have teams that you have to manage and outcomes that you have to deliver. So one of my early career roles was one where I had to consolidate a data center. So in the IT world, it's you go into server rooms, you pull out the servers. It was that kind of a role. So there was this team of about 40 men, actually no women in there, who were responsible to manage some of these servers. And, the first couple of days were, what will she do? It was that subtle, eye rolls and glances and, all body language that indicates that there's a little bit of disbelief, right? And a little bit of skepticism. But my approach to this has been that don't speak, just prove it, right? Like, just show that you can do it. And so as months passed, I, sleeves rolled up. I was in the data centers with them. I was walking around the facility with them. I was standing up for them. And slowly the ice broke. And over time, they warmed up. They knew that it was not just that she's young, it's not that she's a woman, but it's about what she can bring to the table. And so they began looking past who I am to see what I could offer. And, to this date, I'm still in touch with some of them, and they have been lifelong friends. And so I'm grateful for that journey.
Wow. And in the course of this journey, during the course of this journey, did you work on yourself as well?
A lot. So, I think the time after I had my son, to I think when he was about 5 years old, I think there was a lot of working on myself. And I call my career post, that time literally a 2.0 for me. Because as I started my career, my ambition was probably, driven by, you have to achieve this, you have to do this, right? But when my son was born, and as I was, suddenly realizing that the world saw me differently, the world didn't see me as someone who could do it all. The world was doubting my availability. They were doubting whether I could really give it all. And so at that time, it led to a lot of introspection and a lot of conversations with myself to think about, why is it like that? And how do I show up for work? And why do I really care about my work? Right? And so there were a lot of inner monologues that were going that I had to tweak to really, rewire myself to say that it's not about living someone's dream of saying that I've got to get to this position, but it's about what do I derive out of the way I show up for work, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was about fulfillment. It was about any positive contributions I can make in people's lives. And as I sort of reframed the way I saw my career and my engagement with my professional life, it just helped me navigate my career with a much clearer head past that. So there's a lot of work. It's a continuous work in progress. It doesn't stop.
Let's talk about Cummins. Some great things that I actually derived from the conversations I had with the staff here. That leadership, I think a major chunk of leadership is led by women, and the policies are driven by women. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the first things that struck me as I joined Cummins is the number of women leaders we had, and it was an amazing combination. We are not just talking about functional leaders; we are talking about business leaders.
Yeah.
We're talking about strong women who've done sales, who've done they've headed legal, they've headed it, everything, you name it, and the woman leader has done it all, engineering. And so for me, it was it was a feeling of, oh wow, I'm a part of this team, right? And it's a very different energy, because now this leadership team is telling the entire company and all the women in the organization that it is possible, right? Like, there is no ceiling, there is no glass ceiling, it is possible. The company globally is headed by a woman. So there is, at any rung, there is no ceiling, right? And like, I find that personally so inspirational, to be in the presence of extremely capable women, to be led by an extremely capable woman, and so grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and because the conversations I had with the women here, a lot of them are first generation workers from their family. They have actually stepped out of their homes.
Yeah.
They've fought patriarchy, fought challenges. In your experience, what kind of challenges, like you spoke about leading a team and facing resistance, apart from that, any example, any anecdote that you would like to share with us where you met resistance, where you felt being challenged by the circumstances, but you fought them?
Absolutely. So, much earlier in my career, right, again, when I had a young child, there was this situation where I was looking for a different role, right? But the role had come to an end, I was looking for a different role. And so I approached one of the leaders, to say that, hey, I'm open. If you have something you can offer me, I'd love to take it. And I was met with such in-your-face gender stereotypes that, are you sure you can do this role? Are you unhappy that you cannot give your entire time? It was brazen. And I think I'm very proud of my younger self, because I stood up to that conversation. I put my foot down. I said, no, I'm absolutely capable to do that job. And even to the point that this conversation is not the right tonality. Like, I gave him feedback in the moment, saying that this is not the right tonality. It was tough. It was tough. When I came out of that room, I remember I was shaken up. I was shaken up because it's not easy confronting a senior leader in the organization, and it shakes you up, and that's the truth, right? But my family gave me strength that you did the right thing. What's the worst that can happen? Fortunately, I was in the company for a long time. I had a very strong brand for myself, right? And it tided over. But in that moment, confronting some of these stereotypes and challenging them, they just feel so hard, And I'm still, when I look back, I'm super proud of the fact that I found my voice to say that, because it would have been much easier to be quiet and to walk away and be angry and seething. And I think in that moment, I realized that if I don't speak up, I will beat myself up in my head for the rest of my life. And so, standing up was the only way.
And I think angry women take some of the best decisions. And I think no matter how shaky your voice gets, you have to make your point.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times, it is often said that, when you're saying something in a state of vulnerability, no matter, just finish your sentence, just say it.
Just say it, absolutely.
Wow, that's a great thing to learn from you. Also, let's talk about your personal life. And, what we are trying to do is we're trying to make an effort to understand our leaders more. So how do you start your day? Because, I'm sure you have a very packed day. You have to balance a lot of things, take a lot of important decisions, a lot of money is riding on it. So how do you stay sane? Do you plan your day in the morning or the night before? How do you do it?
So I plan for the week ahead. So on Fridays, I'm looking at my entire week, both my professional commitments, my personal commitments, my health. I plan for the week, and I safely guard my calendar. Okay. So time with my husband is important to me. Time with my family is important to me. Time with my child is important to me. It's an adage, right? You have 18 summers with your kid, right? So for me, that time is not negotiable. And so I've been very grateful for, to Cummins, because they've given me the freedom to manage my life and my time. And they allow me to define balance in the way I understand it and I can manage it. you know, and that liberates you, because then you are able to bring your best self to work, and you're able to bring your best self to, you know, to your family as well. So my day starts with a simple cup of chai with my husband on the porch, and that's something we don't trade for anything.
Okay. Okay. So I think when you're a leader, there's a constant, the process of improving yourself or upskilling yourself it's a constant process. What do you do to prioritize your mental health and to refine your skills and to stay relevant in current times?
So for me, mental health is something which is very close to my heart. I understand, you know, how it feels to be anxious, you know, and it is something that I have gone through in the past, and so it is not, you know, for me it's very personal. And given that, like I started running, and I realized that just the element of breathing in and breathing out and the rhythm, you know, it helped me calm my mind down. And so, you know, I work out, and for me that's the time I'm just concentrating on myself. It's interesting, sometimes when there's too much on my mind, I don't even listen to music when I work out, because I'm just calming my mind down and sort of, you know, slowing down a little bit in the moment. So so many things, right? Like mental health is, you know, is something that is absolutely an important prerogative. So what I also realize is that social interactions is something that's so crucial to mental well-being. So over the weekend, how do we, you know, manage some of the social interactions? You know, get your spirit up, and because, like, I think that the COVID time taught us that when you get cut off from other human beings, you really go on a low. And so how do you do it in a manner that you're engaging with people and, you know, feeding your soul, right? So those things are important to me.
Picking up from what we left, when we said that, you know, no matter how shaky your voice gets, just say it. You know, a lot of times I've heard that women have this sense of apprehension while negotiating for the money that they deserve. They might be very talented, but that is one department, and I'm not generalizing, but that's the sentiment usually. What is your piece of advice for those women who are going to meet the HR tomorrow and they want the money that they deserve? Of course, it depends on the skill set too.
True.
So what is your word of advice?
So I'll tell you an interesting anecdote, right? There was this time in my career when I told my husband that, listen, he's my biggest cheerleader. And so he's like, listen, I'm going to really negotiate this one. I got this. So I go into the room, I negotiate. And as I negotiate, you know, I come back triumphantly and I call him. And I say, listen, I've negotiated. And he's like, okay, what did you negotiate? And what turns out is that because I didn't know my base number properly, I actually negotiated a pretty rubbish deal for myself, right? This was long back in my career. And so, you know, from that point, it was a call to action for me that, listen, it's not like, you know, this is not the way you handle your money. And so over the years, I have learned to be a lot more intentional about asking for what I think I'm worth. It feels extremely tough because it's not in our culture to do so. You know, we don't necessarily talk about our worth in terms of monetary value, right? We've always talked about, you know, the value I bring to the table, but, you know, but sometimes you need to step up. And I think the one thing I rewired for myself is that the truth is that somewhere what I get compensated, you know, indicates how I am valued, right? And I think sort of in the way I understood that, I learned not to settle for less, because then in my mind I was valued less, right? And so I think that sort of gave me the, you know, the courage to be able to have these conversations. And then once you build the courage, then you learn the skill of having the conversations, right? I think it's just getting past that hurdle of saying that, listen, it's okay to ask for what you think you need to be valued at, right? So know your numbers, right? Like, know how much you make, know how much you spend, know what you aspire to save, you know, and build a plan to save and buy what you aspire to buy. So, like, don't let it go, right? Like, just be in control of it so that you know what it's adding up to. Like, I'm personally very thrilled when I look around the shop floor, right? We have so many women employees who are a part of the shop floor, and I think this is a conversation that we have across the organization, that, you know, it's important to have that literacy. We have, you know, we have employee resource groups within the organization who also encourage that kind of financial literacy within the organization.
Oh, okay, lovely. You know, one common thread that binds a lot of women is that there's this burden of being perfect all the time. And I know men, I again don't want to generalize, but like we were discussing, that a men won't get asked how do you balance work and home, right? So, do you also deal with this burden of perfection, or have you managed to fight it?
I think, when you're a young mother, it's probably at its amplified best, right? Like, because your child needs you physically more. And so it's very, very amplified at that point in your life. But as you grow older, if you work on it, you get comfortable with it, right? There are, and that's why I feel that it's extremely important to have some of these conversations, that it is okay to not be perfect. It is okay to lean on your support systems and ask for help, and like in life and like at work, where you have some strategies to get over a challenging situation, right? If we apply the same philosophy at home, right? Just having some strategies, right? Like surrounding yourself with reliable people who can help you, leaning on your family, your parents, when you know you need it. You don't have to be a superhero and try to do it all, right? Having your spouse be an equal partner in the process of managing your family and, managing your household, and, reconstructing the image of a family in your head as one where it's a team, right? We play in a manner where each of us plays to our strengths, and we support each other in a manner that, we're supporting each other's strengths. So I think, over time, as you build some of those muscles, like for me, I would say that today I don't struggle as much with guilt. I know that when I'm home, and when I'm not home, I'm at work, and I got to do what I have to do. So, and fortunately, my son understands it, my family understands it, so I've been very lucky in that way.
You spoke about equal partnership at home. So I want my next question is, what do you think should change A in our society, B in our homes, and in our workplaces?
Um, I think in society, it's the construct of, a family. Like, it's everybody's responsibility to be a caregiver, right? If you load 100% of the responsibility on a woman, there is no real way she can have a career. There's no real way she can do anything for herself. So, I think society needs to change that narrative to accept the fact that caregiving is a family responsibility, right? And, redefine it in that manner, rather. Um, for my, for oneself, for me, the way I would think of it is that don't overburden yourself, right? Don't put the spotlight mentally on yourself so much that you stress yourself out, right? It's okay, let go, right? The world will survive if you don't cook that one meal. The world will survive if you bring in a cook for a month, right? And then you can cook as a hobby rather than as a necessity. So just don't be so hard on yourself.
And at workplace?
And at workplace, many things, right? Like, policies, and making sure that there are right policies to support, not just women, but men as well, right? Like a paternity leave as an example, right? I mean, that's the time when the woman needs probably the most amount of help. And as organizations, like I love Cummins' paternity policy, right? The fact that we have a paternity leave, it helps support the family, right? And, you bring in policies. And, the part that I have enjoyed the most while I'm here is the aspect and element of care. There is so much you can, capture via policies, but there is so much more you can achieve with care and empathy. And, so just care for people around you. Understand what they're going through, be empathetic and be there for them. And I think overall we will make the workplace a much better place, in terms of bringing your whole self to work, right?